I actually have a really small purple sack, and it's kind of fluffy, kind of furry. Some would say velvet. And what's in the sack, you may ask? So, in this sack, I've got 2 fragrances from Fragrance One, of course, Jeremy Fragrance. 2 fragrances from Stephen Redolessence or his Navitus Parfums line. I've got 2 fragrances from Ashton Gent Scent with his Galleria Parfums line. And I've got Norton & Wilson's Gravitas Parfums, of course, Mr. Smelly 1977. I've actually had this idea for quite a while now, because I've just thought, you know, everyone is releasing a fragrance line nowadays. Like, even my nan's got a fragrance line. Nan, do you have a fragrance line coming out? See, I told you. I got all of these from Fragrance Samples UK just because I wanted them to all be the same size so I could cover up the names and then I could blindly test them and rate from least favourite to favourite. So right here I got my lovely lady to tape over them. I don't know which one's which. I haven't seen her do this. I have no idea which one is which. I'm just going to blindly test them over the next week because I have 7, and every day I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you my thoughts. And on the 7th day, I am going to come back and rate them from least favourite to favourite. So I tell you what I think the best fragrance reviewer fragrance is, the best fragrance reviewer fragrance is, the best release from a fragrance reviewer. It's day number 1, so I tried out fragrance number 1. Doesn't mean it's fragrance 1. Doesn't mean it's not fragrance 1. Anyways, I put this on today, so I've just got this here to kind of remind me of the top notes. So to me, this is definitely their take on the Aventus DNA. I find this is a lot darker than Aventus, a lot greener than Aventus, kind of like a really earthy, smoky, dense Aventus is what I would get with this. I find it doesn't have that really strong pineapple note that Aventus is famous for. It's kind of, there's something else. It's sweet, but it's not as punchy. You know, pineapples are one of the most kind of like, not sour, but acidic, powerful, punchy fragrances, punchy flavours. It's just a really intense fruit. It's got that ashy smokiness to it for sure. And I feel like the opening is a lot more ashy and smoky than Aventus is. I think it's actually really quite nice. And to be fair, this performs just as good as Aventus. Probably better than modern day batches. In the dry down, the Aventus DNA is gone. It doesn't smell like Aventus anymore. I almost thought I sprayed something else on afterwards. It's definitely not linear. You kind of get that really strong, intense, mossy, dark Aventus DNA for the first 3 to 4 hours. Really strong. I've actually got on my notes here 3 hours in and the projection was fantastic. So this performs really, really well. I was getting wafts of this all day. Day number 1, fragrance number 1, that could or could not be fragrance 1. I'm quite impressed. Right, so it's day 2 already. Time goes fast. And it's another clone. Kind of another clone. It's about as close of a clone as yesterday's one was. Yesterday's one definitely gave off an Aventus vibe, but to be fair to it, it was a bit different. This one, as soon as I sprayed it on, I was like, what is that? And then it clicked. It is Killian Black Phantom. Killian Black Phantom straight off the bat, literally from the word go. So like Black Phantom, you kind of get that cocoa buttery chocolate vibe. Bit of almond in there. It's very sweet, very gourmand, very strong in the opening. But there is this kind of natural fresh note that kind of goes throughout the entirety of the fragrance, and it just kind of lifts it up a little bit. I don't think the note is celery, but in my head, when I first sprayed this on and I smelt it, I got chocolate, toffee, a little bit of coffee, almond and celery. So there is like a fresh celery-ish note. To be fair, we'll find out what that note is on day 7 when I have a look at all the fragrances and I have a look at all the notes and kind of try and guess which one's which after rating them, of course. But no, being a gourmand, of course it is quite synthetic, but I think there is an element of kind of naturals in here that actually kind of makes me prefer this. It's just a little bit different. It's got a little earthy, natural vibe to it. Just that one note that kind of peeks through the kind of typical Black Phantom DNA. And to be fair to this one, absolute beast. I would say this is a beast mode fragrance. It's the first beast mode of the week. Number one projected really well and it lasted really well. This one is a different animal. I sprayed this on, I started work at 12, so I sprayed this on probably about 11:30, and right now it's just before 8 PM. So I've had it on for quite a while, and this is going strong. This is still going strong. It's not just like, oh, a little bit of a skin scent. This is still projecting well. So I think this is going to be the one to beat in terms of performance throughout the week. As it dries down, that kind of celery fresh note does die a little bit, and it kind of becomes that more cocoa buttery, sweet, chocolatey vibe that Black Phantom gives off. I don't get any iris, but there's this kind of chocolatey sweetness that sometimes when I was at work and I'd be like waving my hands around whilst talking and I'd catch a waft, it would smell like Valentino Uomo, which I adore, one of my favourite fragrances of all time. So I really think that there is definitely something in this that is also in that, because up close it smells nothing like it, but in the air it does get a bit of that vibe. So no, I am very excited. You've got number 2 to number 1, it is worlds apart. You've got an Aventus clone-ish, and you've got a Black Phantom clone-ish, once again. So really, I think this is going to be a very varied week. So it's going to be kind of pointless. It's going to be me just kind of telling you what my personal favourite is. But I'm quite interested. I think it's going to be a varied bunch, and I think it's going to be fun. Hello everybody, welcome back to day number 3 of 7. Of course, as it's day 3, I go for fragrance number 3. And to my absolute delight, it's not a clone of a popular fragrance. Come on, it only took 3 days for there not to be a fragrance that smells like another popular fragrance. We have an original, but I hate it. I don't like this at all. This, I'm not going to say it's bad, because just because I don't like it doesn't mean someone else won't. This for me, just not something I would wear at all. There's a few times throughout the day I was kind of like, I wish this didn't project so much, and I wish it didn't last so long. I do usually write notes. I've got my laptop there. I usually write a few notes throughout the day, send it to the laptop, and then I'll read them out and have them there, obviously as notes. I don't need to, because this is very linear, very strong, longevity is great. It smells like 80% as strong as it did when I first sprayed it on, and I sprayed it on about 12 o'clock. It is now 8 o'clock, 8:30. So it's performing really well. So what is it about the scent that I don't like? So day number 3, what I get is this strong tobacco note. It kind of smells like wet tobacco, so not like a dry or a smoked tobacco or tobacco leaf. It's not this kind of warm blanket tobacco. It's very much kind of like you open up a backy pouch, smell it, it's got that vibe, wet rolling tobacco. Not kind of what I expect when it comes to a tobacco note. This tobacco note is kind of pushed forward with this clove note, and there's also like an aniseedy note there and a licorice note. I believe it smells like licorice and tobacco for me, and yeah, it's not for me. If you like your tobaccos, you might enjoy this. If you like your tobaccos kind of like Pure Havana and Naxos, you probably won't like this. It's really, really different take on a tobacco fragrance. This one isn't sweet, it isn't kind of cherry vibe, it's very not dry, because as I said, it kind of smells damp, but it's very bitter, pungent, licorice, wet tobacco vibe, and that's really kind of all I get. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I smell, but my mind just goes to wet tobacco and licorice, like you've opened up a pack of Golden Virginia or something and just put a few bars of wet licorice in there, shook it up and just took the licorice out, smelt it. That's kind of the vibe that this gets. So I'm not a fan. It is unique, I've never smelled anything like this, so I guess it gets props for that, but definitely wouldn't buy a bottle of this myself. Once again, it performs really well. So if you kind of think you'd like the smell of bitter licorice and tobacco fragrance, then go for it. For me, this is definitely my least favourite out of the 3 I have tried, but of course that is just my taste. So as you can imagine by now, day number 4, I chose fragrance number 4. So this one, I'm glad to say, is another original, but I actually like it this time. Get in! This one opens up with like a really strong orange note. There's a few kind of herbaceous notes in there as well, kind of like a basil or like a thyme, something like that. Not too strong, not too green, but it gives it a nice kind of warm blanket of this green vibe, which supports this really orangey citrus. It's not like a punchy lemon or a punchy orange. It is kind of Satsuma-esque, kind of like a Satsuma clementine mandarin type of orange. It's not a really poppy, fizzy, zesty kind of fragrance. It is a bit more of like a dark, deeper orange, kind of like the peel. So all the notes that I kind of pick out, to me, would tell me it's going to be like a barbershop fougere fragrance. I'm getting lavender, I'm getting some citrus notes, I'm getting sort of basil, some green notes as well, a little bit of woods. But it's not like a Beau de Jour. It's quite modern, quite fresh. There was at times where I would spray this on and I was getting like ultra male kind of vibes, and I don't know why, because it doesn't really smell like ultra male at all, but I was kind of getting that sweet, there's something in the top, like the mid to top in ultra male or male, ultra male, that is really sweet, and I get that in this. Of course it doesn't smell anywhere near as like sickly sweet as ultra male, but it does have that sweetness to it that I think the old school fragrances probably didn't. I'm guessing there's probably like a relatively heavy dose of vanilla in this, especially in the dry down as well. So I can still smell there's something on my skin. What I sprayed on this morning is not what is on my skin anymore. It's kind of this vibrant, zesty, slightly fruity, green, barbershop-ish. Like the notes in there would tell me it's barbershop-y, but it's not that spicy. It is quite fresh. Now I'm getting like an ambery, warm vanilla kind of fragrance, which is left on the skin. It is just, right now it's quite faint. It's not the biggest beast, it's not the most amazing projection, it's not the most amazing longevity, not the best sillage, but it does a really good job. You know, I can still smell it on me, and it's what, 9 hours later. I don't really want a fragrance this classy and this nice and subtle to be too strong, because otherwise it kind of defeats the object. But it does perform really, really well, to be fair. It does smell like something you could make a signature scent. I wore it in winter and I don't think it was offensive. I don't think it didn't perform in summer. I think this would do a great job. Spring, a fantastic job. Autumn, once again, a fantastic job. So I think this is a really versatile scent and a great office scent as well. Really, really nice. I'm quite impressed with this one. Hello everybody, welcome back to day number 5. So, fragrance number 5. This one's like a really warm, woody fragrance. It had a bit of like orange or lime in there. It was once again not a poppy citrus, but it was kind of, they're giving it a little bit of something fresh at the top. As the day goes on, it kind of has this Dior-like feel. It's quite, don't want to say chocolatey, but very vanilla-y, warm, woodsy. Really nice fragrance, really mass appealing, I think. So I'm kind of guessing this is probably one of Jeremy's. Really warm, really nice. Gives this Dior-like feel. Like I imagine if this was in a Dior bottle, I wouldn't really bat an eyelid. Not to say it smells like Dior Intense or anything. I think, off the cap, warm, woodsy, it's not a far cry to me from Halfeti. So I've got that on here. It's got that kind of warm, maybe like a little bit of rose in here, but just a very, very, very small bit. It's got this kind of warm blanket feel. Really nice, kind of good for the winter. I would say probably better for autumn because it wasn't too strong, but it was strong enough. Right now I'm getting kind of like an ambery, vanilla-y dry down. It just smells sweet, essentially. I can't pick out any of the notes that I picked out at the start.
just like a sweet woody ambery base with a bit of vanilla. Now I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but there's not really anything too much to this. It is very simple. I find it's nothing too challenging, very mass appealing. There's not notes that kind of really stick out. I just get a little bit of citrus, I get a bit of woods, I get some warm vanilla, maybe a bit of like ambergris in there as well. Very mass appealing, very modern. And yeah, so overall 5. It's a very nice fragrance. So it projects pretty well. At the start, probably about 2 hours, it was relatively strong. After that, it kind of goes into this more warm vanilla-y dry down, and that's still on there now. So it's about 8:30 now, so it's been 8.5 hours. You can still definitely smell it. So it performs well enough. It smells very designer. It doesn't smell like a niche, but it's not particularly a bad thing. I mean, if it costs £400, then it definitely is. But no, overall, I think this is a pretty decent fragrance. All right, everyone, welcome back to day number 6. Make this nice and short and sweet for you. So this one, really citrusy at the top. Got some woods, but it is, I'll say about 96% just citrus is coming through. Getting kind of lemons, limes, maybe a little bit of grapefruit, but it is mainly that kind of really poppy citrus vibe. Really bright, really fresh. Yeah, really quite nice. Ultra mass appealing with the woods and the citrus. Really, really mass appealing. Definitely a bit of ambroxan in here. It has this modern fragrance vibe. You kind of pick up a lot of the blue fragrances like Sauvage. It kind of is in that same ballpark. I wouldn't say it is a blue fragrance, but it definitely kind of has, there's like a similar note in there, which I'm guessing is ambroxan. Kind of has that similar body. It sounds weird, but in my mind, it's kind of like the upper mids. So in the upper mids, you definitely have that warm kind of, not metallic, because this is definitely a lot less metallic than Sauvage. But it just has this kind of warmth to it, which I think the ambroxan brings in. As it dries down, that kind of dissipates a little bit. Of course, the citruses were never going to last forever. Pretty well projecting fragrance. It's not too bad. It's kind of what you expect for something like this. It's not going to be an absolute beast. To me, on my skin, Sauvage isn't an absolute beast either, but a fairly well performing fragrance anyways. Once it kind of dries down, you do get a little bit of this like ambergris saltiness to it. I'm not a massive fan of ambergris, so it wasn't too much where I was like turned off by it. It was still pretty good. I still enjoyed the fragrance, but there definitely was these kind of warm sea salty notes coming through, which I'm guessing is from the ambergris in this. But no, so it projects pretty well. That citrus pokes through with the woody notes for about 1.5 hours, 2 hours. It does kind of get to that more ambergris, sea salty, warm woody fragrance after the kind of 1.5 hours, 2 hour mark, and that'll kind of sit on there. To be fair, it's about 8 hours, getting on to 8 hours since I've had this on, and I can't really pick out anything apart from some really, really faint kind of amber notes. Just slight warmth on the skin. Not the best performer, actually probably the worst performer out of all these fragrances I've tried this week. A really good designer fragrance. I just don't think it's niche quality at all. Designer all the way through. The composition is so quintessentially designer, especially modern fragrances as well. It's so designer. I'm not shocked, because obviously it's probably one of Jeremy's, and he does love his designers. Kind of shocked it's so designer. It's a really well done designer, don't get me wrong. It's not blown my socks off, but it is pretty decent. So I think there's a lot of negative reviews on there, kind of just because of who Jeremy is. I don't agree with that at all. It's a pretty decent fragrance. I mean, don't get me wrong, no fucking way am I paying that price, not a chance, but it is pretty decent. Once again, I could be completely wrong, so we will find out tomorrow if I was correct with this. But overall, pretty good. All right, everybody, welcome back to day 7. I am actually really glad that this is going to be over. Quite a tedious thing filming a video after work every single day, but we're here. So, what did day 7 bring? Now this caused me a little bit of a headache, really. Yesterday, I said that the fragrance that I smell, I was sure that was Jeremy. This one also, I think could have been Jeremy's, except for one thing. this is the one thing that's kind of swaying me away from it being a fragrance. This is very mass appealing. The reason why I particularly thought it was one of Jeremy's is I think it does open up a little bit close to Ultra Male. I think it's kind of got that really sweet vibe, ultra sweet, mass appealing fragrance bomb. But this one, it has a really weird opening to it, and there's this one note in this entire fragrance that's just so weird and for me kind of off-putting. I didn't really enjoy this one too much. Really strange. So as I said, it's just really mass appealing, just an ultimate kind of mass appealing, almost clubbing fragrance. It's got those kind of clubby vibes. It's very youthful, very sweet, but there's this one note, and I don't know if it's like a really earthy patchouli or something. I've never actually smelt this before. It's kind of like a burnt rubber. Like this burnt rubber, really dirty, filthy note. Almost animalic, just kind of runs through this. And at first I was kind of like, what is that? So strange. But the kind of bubblegummy opening kind of keeps it afloat for me. Really interesting. I was not expecting this. Off first whiff, I was kind of like, okay, it's just going to be another mass appealing, really sweet vanilla bomb type of fragrance, you know what I mean? But no, it completely switched it up to quite a dirty, quite an almost animalic fragrance. There's a bit of woods in there, of course, as there is in pretty much all of these, I imagine. But this one, even off the cap, it's got that really sweet vibe. Just this dirty, earthy kind of vibe to it as well. Really strange. I don't know if there's kind of something in there or the bottle's just off, but at the start it's got this fruity mango, pineapple with like a bit of like a Parma violet kind of smell going on, and then there is that animalic dirty note that goes through. Sprayed this on about 7.5, 8 hours ago, and it's pretty much completely evaporated. The only thing that you could smell after about an hour and 20 minutes in was that kind of rough, animalic-y, dirty note, which is a bit of a shame because at the start it projects really well. Like at the start, this is beast mode. Really strong fragrance. I was like, do you know what? That animalic note is coming through. Not a big fan, but this is pushing out far. I imagine smelling close to the skin, it's going to be a little bit dirty. Yeah, it's probably going to push through those fruits and those kind of fresher notes and make a really nice kind of sillage. That lasts an hour and 20 minutes. And after that, it is just the dirt. And I'm not a massive fan of whatever note is causing this aroma. And I'm kind of glad it doesn't perform too well. I'd say about 4.5, 5 hours after that, you're really struggling to smell it. Just this faint sort of dirtiness to it. Bit strange, I must admit, a bit strange. Like, I was not expecting this, and I thought in my head, and I'm going to list out all the ones I think they are before I announce which ones they actually are. I thought I had this nailed. And then I sprayed this today and I was like, right, well, that's fucked everything up. So it's been interesting. And I'm quite interested to see how good I am at smelling notes or just how awful I am at smelling notes. And if I'm being honest, I'm kind of shitting myself.